my very first OSHA inspection. If you've never been through an OSHA inspection, you don't really know what to expect. And today I want to tell you about the first time I went through an OSHA audit, what I was thinking, the experience, the background. I really want to tell you why I do what I do and how you can prepare your team so that you're not doing what I did. I think it'll make your life a lot better. Let's jump into it. Hey guys, before we get into it, if you don't have an OSHA audit checklist, take a few seconds, go to my website, Help with OSHA. You can download a free OSHA audit checklist. It will explain exactly what you need to do to prepare your team for an unexpected OSHA visit. It's quick, it's worth your time. Go download the form today. All right, so let me tell you what happened on my very first OSHA inspection. So I was at a company, let me give you a little background. I was at a company doing what I always wanted to do. Right out of college, I started working for a boat building company doing fiberglass boat building, loved it. Through a weird turn of events, I ended up changing careers. Not necessarily because I wanted to, it just kind of happened that way, and doors opened, and I ended up working with a company that was doing safety training and safety consulting. So I started doing that, did that for a few years, kind of learned what it was about, then transitioned into another role where I was at a food processing plant doing safety management. But I wasn't just doing safety management. I was probably like a lot of you guys, I was wearing multiple hats. I was wearing hats where I was the safety guy, but I was also the food safety person and in charge of making sure the product was safe for customers. And so I'd always say, look, I do people safety and I do food safety. And sometimes it was confusing about which one was more important because they're both equally important, but sometimes they're at opposing sides. On top of that, I was doing quality and environmental. So I had a lot of different hats I was wearing, and safety with people, OSHA safety was one of them, but probably not the main one. I was really focused. My boss, he wanted me to be focused in on food safety and quality. So needless to say, when I went to the morning meeting, it was in the middle of the week. I want to say it was a Tuesday. It might have been a Wednesday, but it was in the middle of the week. And I went to the morning meeting, came out, had a list of information. I remember I had a legal pad with a bunch of notes of things that need to be done. Left the morning meeting, was in the main hallway out in the building, in the facility, and got a text which happened to come through. OSHA's at the front door. We need you here now. And I've told this before because it's one of those feelings that just stuck with me, because on one hand, all I could think was my day is ruined. I've got all this stuff that I need to do, and now my day is going to be tied up doing something completely different, right? Like I said, my boss was focused on food safety and quality. We had boxes going out the door. We had customer requirements. We had all kinds of stuff with the USDA. And all I could think was, oh, now I've got to work with an OSHA inspector. And I've never done that before. But overall, I felt pretty good about our safety programs. I didn't feel like we were doing anything terribly unsafe. I knew enough to have the training in place and the written programs in place. But I remember I walked to the front of the building, the front office there, and it just, the vibe just was down. Okay, now this was in the early 2000s, I guess 2009, 2010, something like that. And I remember walking up to the manager and him saying, "Hey, he's in the lobby right now. There's two guys in there. Just bring him to the conference room and we'll get started." And I was the guy. I was kind of the point person. I was the one in charge, but I'd never done this before. I didn't really know what to expect. And so I went and we kind of got the compliance guys, the OSHA inspectors, into the conference room. We started talking. We kind of closed off the doors, make sure we had a little bit of privacy. And I remember they were there because they'd had an employee complaint, and they just kind of started going through some of the things that they wanted to see. They were worried about our machine guarding. They were worried about lockout tagout. So they kind of zoned in on those two factors. And I remember in the process, they did the opening conference where they showed us their credentials and they talked about what they were going to do. But what I remember was I talked to the receptionist, and the receptionist was an older lady, but she wasn't like that sweet older lady that you might picture. She was kind of rough on the edges. And I remember she called me over and she said, "You won't believe what these guys said to me." And I said, "What?" And she said, "The first guy came in and he said, 'I want to speak to the person that makes the most money here.'" And I was like, "Did he really say that?" She was like, "Yeah, he did." And it was he just wasn't respectful, disrespectful, kind of intimidating. Now, I say that because that's the God's honest truth. That's exactly what happened. It's what she told me happened, what happened. Since then, I know that this inspector is no longer with the Department of Labor. He's no longer with OSHA. And he had kind of a rough reputation. But that's exactly what happened. She was not happy with him. She was upset by the way that she was treated. And that kind of started the whole thing off on a bad note. Now, we met in the conference room. It was me, it was the plant manager, who I love the guy. He was a great guy, but he was the kind of guy that was a little bit of a loose cannon. You never really knew what he was going to say. And he always made me nervous because if you had an improvement that you had made, he'd be the first one to say, "Well, we made that improvement because, man, we were so bad before," and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's focus on the positives, not on the negatives. But really nice guy. We did the opening conference, then we transitioned to the walk around. They wanted to see some of the machine guarding. We had some product that was being cut on conveyors and cutting machines and meat processing machines, which was a very dangerous environment, but we had guarding in place. We had safety features in place. And I remember we kind of walked through the facility to where he wanted to go. Now, I knew enough to take him only where he needed to go, but I hadn't really prepared the rest of the people for what to expect. And so people were a little bit on edge. They knew that OSHA was there. Management knew that OSHA was there, and they didn't really know what they should be doing. So they were kind of floating around. They'd peek in the room and then they'd walk away, and it wasn't planned out. And so that's one thing I would highly recommend. One of the takeaways is I learned you want to have a game plan. You want to know what to do if a compliance person, a regulatory agency shows up at your door. You want to have a plan of who's in charge, roles, and responsibilities. So that was one big takeaway that I want to share with you. We did the walk around. They found some things. We took pictures of everything. And then they left. And I remember they weren't there that long. They were there probably from about 9 o'clock until about 1 o'clock. And when we left, I remember thinking, I'm hungry because I didn't eat lunch. I didn't have a break. I just kind of worked right on through. And I remember just kind of being stressed about what's the next step. I can't remember if we did the closing conference that afternoon, but for some reason I'm thinking it was delayed and we ended up doing it over the phone. But I might be mistaken about that. I know that when they left, we had a list of things that needed to be done. And immediately we got together. We had the maintenance team in the office. I had me there, production was there, and we went through, here's what he found, here's what we need to do to fix it. And we kind of had a game plan right there. What I remember as a safety manager was everyone deferred to me. Everyone looked at me and was like, "Okay, what are you going to do to fix it?" And I thought, this isn't my job. My job isn't to fix all of your problems. My job is to make sure that the problems get fixed, that we coordinate, that we have contractors that are working on stuff, that we have a plan. And trust me, they didn't find a whole lot. They went through written programs, they went through accident records, they went through a walk of the facility, and they didn't find a whole lot. Now, they had some recommendations, and sometimes they were nice, sometimes they weren't so nice. But the takeaway was, I'm going to make a list of things that need to be done, and then we're going to get back in touch with them to have abatements and corrective actions. So I remember doing all of this, and the way I felt, my feeling about it was, this is one more thing I need to do. And I'm so tired of being reactive instead of proactive. And that reactive feeling was a bad feeling. Now, the owner of the company, I remember he came in and got involved, and this was a smaller company at that time. It's since gotten a lot bigger, but at that time it was a family-owned business, and we had one owner. He was the boss. He made all the decisions. I remember he came in, and I was explaining how we wanted to go to the informal conference so that we could show him, these are the issues that were found, here's all the things we fixed, here's what we're doing, and trying to negotiate the settlement down so that the fines were less. We went to the informal conference, and I remember me and my boss, the owner of the company, we met beforehand at like a coffee shop and kind of went over what was talked about, what was seen. He was very hands-off. He really just was mad. He was mad because he did not feel like he deserved to be targeted for safety inspections. And it didn't make the process go smoother because he was already kind of riled up. He felt like he was being taken advantage of and targeted by the government. And it kind of put in a us versus them. Didn't work out that well. Didn't like that. I felt like it could have been done better. I felt like me as the safety manager, after that, I kind of knew more what I needed to do to prepare upper leadership for the process. Because I would have explained to him ahead of time, here's what I need from you in order to handle this, right? This is my job. You want me to handle it? Let me handle it, and I'll make sure you're there and you get what you need. So he went to the informal conference with me. We sat down. On one side of the table was us. On the other side of the table was the OSHA regional manager, and we went back and forth, showed him what we'd done. It was not a very pleasant experience, but it wasn't a pleasant experience, not really because of anything that OSHA did. It was an unpleasant experience because of how my boss, the owner of the company, handled the interaction. He was he wanted to fight, he wanted to argue. And the point of the negotiation isn't to fight and argue, it's really to say, we have a problem. How are we going to address it? How are we going to fix it? In his mind, we didn't have a problem, safety problem. We had a problem with compliance. We had a problem with inspectors. So OSHA's done a lot in the past 15 years to change how they interact with companies. I've heard much better things. I've had much better experiences since that first one. But so much of it is knowing your rights as an employer, the rights of your employees, and the process to what's involved in the OSHA inspection process. Because there's steps, right? When they're on site, they're going to do the they're going to do the opening conference. They're going to do the walk around, and they're going to close it. Then the process really gets started. The responding to OSHA, taking pictures, making abatements, fixing it. If you keep in mind, everybody should have the same goal. Everybody's goal should be, we're trying to keep people safe. Plain and simple. If you look at the mission statement for OSHA, it is solid. We want to protect American workers. We want to protect the workforce. The employer, the manager, the owner, the supervisor, they should have the same goal. Their goal should be to protect their employees, keep their employees safe. So if we're all going at it the same way, if we're all rowing in the same direction, then things are going to get much better. So, three big takeaways I want to leave with you. How I felt, that's one takeaway. I felt overwhelmed, stressed out, like I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I had been in safety for a number of years, I felt overwhelmed, stressed out, like I didn't know what I was doing because I hadn't been through the process. The second big takeaway is I realized I needed to prepare my management team for an OSHA inspection. They needed to know their roles and responsibilities. They needed to know what they were being held accountable for. So how I felt, roles and responsibilities. And then the third big piece of it, the takeaway, was making sure that I was communicating with upper management so that they knew everything was going well. Or I need your help with this. Because when he came in confrontational, and that didn't help the process at all. So those are three big takeaways. I'd say a bonus one of the last ones I'll say, is the day after, everybody knew OSHA had been there. And that's when the rumors started floating around. Oh, I heard that they saw this, and I heard that they found that, and I saw the email about blah, blah, blah. The rumors start so fast that as a safety manager, you need to control the communication, and you need to make sure that people are being informed. So there's no hidden secrets. There's no rumors that get started. You should quickly communicate. Yeah, we had an OSHA inspection. Communicate to your employees, communicate to your supervisors. We're doing everything we can to make sure you guys are safe. When they came in, we found a few areas we need to improve on, and we're getting on top of it. The communication needs to be short, sweet, to the point, but the takeaway, the feeling the employees need to feel is that management cares about me. Management cares about me, and they're fixing the problem. And if they found anything, they're making it better than it ever was before. So that's my takeaway. That was my experience. And honestly, that was the catalyst for me starting help with OSHA, because I know how, again, stressed out, overwhelmed I felt, unprepared. And I thought, there needs to be a program out there that helps busy managers prepare their team for an OSHA audit. And that's one of the reasons I started help with OSHA, because I wanted to help managers be prepared for this, because you can do everything right and you can still have an OSHA inspection, right? If you do things not right, if you have people that get hurt, you're guaranteed an OSHA inspection. But you can do everything right and they can still show up. So it's important to understand how that process works, because it will make your job a lot better in the long run. And there's always places you can improve. So this isn't a one-stop, yep, I fixed it, we're done. It really is something that needs to be checked at least once a year to make sure the procedures and the plan are ready so that people know what they're responsible for and what their role is during an OSHA inspection. If I can help you with this, please go to my website, Help with OSHA. Download the free OSHA audit checklist. I've got a link for my online course. It's one of the best ways you can possibly get prepared for this. It's an online course that explains exactly what you need to do to prepare your team. So until we talk again, do everything you can to keep the people you work with safe, because no one should get hurt at work.